We're going to go ahead and get started. It's 8 o'clock. So hello, everyone. Before we get started tonight, I want to make sure that just double check and make sure that you are. That will help us during the presentation to not get background noise coming in and interrupting the presentation. So just please make sure you're muted. On behalf of the World Wildlife Fund Sustainable Ranching Initiative team, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's webinar. Our team is made up of 5 of us: Alexis Bonagoski, based out of Montana, Aaron Clausen in Montana, myself here in Nebraska, Kate Rasmussen from South Dakota, and then Caitlin Gillespie in Montana. Tonight's Ranching with Wildlife webinar is on coyotes and badgers. I am Ann Dvorak, a program specialist based out of Nebraska. And before I turn it over to tonight's presenter, wait a minute.
Cardboard chair.
Well, would you look at that? It's a music clock. And we know what that means. It's time for Chat Chuckles. This is the time of the program where I ask ChatGPT to write me a joke, and then I share it with all of you. Today, I asked ChatGPT to write me a joke about a badger and a coyote going into a bar together. A coyote and a badger walk into a bar together. The bartender looks up and says, "Hey, we don't get many talking animals in here. What can I get you guys?" The badger looks at the coyote and says, "I'll have a root beer, and my friend here will have a howl on the rocks." The bartender, intrigued, serves up the drinks, and soon the whole bar is filled with laughter as the badger and coyote regale them with wild tales from the Great Plains. So that's the ChatGPT joke during a music clock. So thanks for hanging with me. Enough with the jokes. I would like to mention that tonight's webinar series is being hosted as part of World Wildlife Fund's Ranch Systems and Viability Planning, or as we like to call it, the RSVP program. Some of you on this call tonight are enrolled in RSVP, but for those who are not, this is a little bit about the program. It's an outcome-based approach to help keep ranchers ranching by conserving high-quality grasslands and sustaining biodiversity in ranching communities. This slide gives a brief overview of the program. It's really designed to work with ranchers on a personal level to help them achieve their land management goals. Ranchers that are enrolled are given educational scholarships, high-level monitoring for adaptive change, and access to cost share and technical assistance. And our main job is that we're working to build a network of ranchers who are excited about protecting the grasslands of the Northern Great Plains. If RSVP is something you're interested in and you'd like more information, you can reach out to me or Alexis, Aaron, Kate, or Caitlin, and we'd be happy to explain the program to you in more detail. I am recording tonight's webinar, and this recording will be made available to all of you, and you're welcome to share it. If you have any questions as the presenter presents tonight, please put those questions into the chat box. And then at the end of the presentation, we will take some time to address those questions. So please just put them into the chat box. So I'm going to stop share. So Emma, you can get your share on. Again, I'm going to remind everyone to please mute yourself if you're not already muted. Okay, tonight we are joined by Emma Balunek. She is a conservation photographer and a current master's student at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and she's studying conservation storytelling. Her research focuses on the coyote-badger hunting relationship and the prairie wildlife that also lives in the areas where coyotes and badgers hunt. So we're happy to have her here tonight to share with us the story that she's been researching and exploring over the past few years. So Emma, I'm going to let you take it from here. And again, audience, if you have questions, please put them in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro, Anne. Love the joke. Can you see everything fine so far? Okay.
Yes, looks great. Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to be here and speak with you all. I see a lot of familiar names coming through, so thanks everybody for coming. Like Anne said, I'm a current master's student at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I'm working with a group called Platte Basin Time Lapse. And so Platte Basin Time Lapse is a group of conservation storytellers who are working to connect people with where their water comes from by telling stories from the Platte Basin watershed, which starts up in the Rockies in Wyoming and Colorado and follows the Platte River all the way through Nebraska. So tonight I'm going to start with a little bit of my background and then the journey that led me to studying the coyote badger and hunting relationship, which involved a rock pile in the middle of the prairie with a surprising amount of wildlife. And then I'll share some information about this intriguing duo, and we should have enough time for questions. So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. When I was 1, my parents bought an old dairy farm about an hour away in western Pennsylvania, which we call the farm. They bought the land to restore it back to a more natural state for the wildlife, and they put a conservation easement on it to protect it forever. One of the main projects we did was converted the old fields back to wetlands. These are some photos of me when I was 3. I'm sure I was a huge help at that age. The photo in the bottom left, so my dad and I, and this was when we started that wetlands creation project. And so now we've had the property for about 25 years now, and the photo on the bottom right is from 2019. So it's been pretty incredible to see the change over time. The wetlands now have so many different diverse plant species. The ducks overwinter there. We possibly have fishers. We have a beaver family. And my sister is a birder, and she's documented over 150 species of birds on the property. And the rest of the property is deciduous forests, and we have a few switchgrass fields which provide habitat for animals like deer and turkey. We have some vernal pools. It's my dog's favorite place and one of mine as well. I grew up playing outside all the time. In the house that I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, we had a creek down the street, so I was always there trying to catch frogs and stuff, and I was always begging the neighborhood kids to come explore it with me. And we spent almost every weekend at the farm, and I'd help plant trees and monitor bluebird boxes. We'd go fishing, caught newts and tadpoles, and explored the woods. And these experiences are what created a deep appreciation for the outdoors in me. Did I leave? Oh no. Okay.
Yes, it quit sharing.
Okay. Let's see. Where did it leave off?
I think we heard you the whole time. It just then cut off when you stopped.
It was the map
Yep.
going to Colorado.
Yep, the map.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Okay. So yeah, I ended up going to Colorado State. Can you see it?
Yes, you're good.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So I went to Colorado State University in Fort Collins for their natural resources program, and I studied ecosystem science and sustainability, and I graduated in 2020. I loved my time in Colorado. It was incredible. Freshman year, my friend and I spent almost every weekend hiking and exploring what Colorado had to offer. And my dog Coral. She loves going to the mountains as well. And although I love the mountains, what really caught my attention was the eastern half of the state, the shortgrass prairie, which you can see here circled in red in the lighter brown colors. And so these gray blobs are the major cities. So this is Denver, Fort Collins, Colorado Springs, and Pueblo. I don't know exactly what it was about the prairie. Maybe it was the prairie dogs or the wide open vistas that's completely different from the deciduous borders of Ohio that I was used to. Or maybe it was the surprising abundance of wildlife, or maybe the often overlooked aspect of the prairie, especially in Colorado, where most people look west of the mountains. But there's just some sort of magic to the prairie that's hard to describe. It's a very special place. The grasslands are some of the most endangered ecosystems because of the conversion to commercial agriculture and developments, but they're incredibly diverse still. Like many people do, I always had overlooked the grasslands as well. I've driven from Ohio to Colorado over 20 times, and I just thought the Great Plains were corn. And the biggest surprise to me was the abundance of wildlife that call the prairie home. I'm also a photographer, which I got into as a kid from my dad. And in college, I learned about conservation photography, and that was a big turning point in my life because I learned I could combine my two favorite things, wildlife and conservation, and photography. In 2018, I thought I should try my hand at creating a conservation photo story, and I started working on a story about urban prairie dogs in Fort Collins. That story led me to what is now one of my field sites for my Coyote Badger project, which is located in northeastern Colorado at the Central Plains Experimental Range. It's owned by USDA Agriculture Research Service, and their main goal is to do long-term grazing research. So I got permission to photograph prairie dogs there for my project, and my friend and I went out one day and we found this rock pile, and there were golden eagle pellets scattered all around it. So we were super excited. I had no idea that golden eagles even produce pellets. And so we came back the next day with a trail cam to see if the eagles were still coming to the spot. And sure enough, they did. They were there all the time. We were thrilled, and this quickly became how I spent most of my weekends trying to photograph these eagles. So this location is about 45 minutes away from Fort Collins, where I lived at the time. And so I pretty much came out at a weekly or bi-weekly basis for about 2 years, from the middle of 2020 to the middle of 2022. And then in August of 2022, I moved to Lincoln, Nebraska to start working on my master's. So now I visit about every month, but instead of my drive being 45 minutes one way, it's 7 hours. So big difference. So we set up DSLR camera traps to capture higher quality images of eagles. So this is one of the setups. The setup has changed over the years, but has all the same components. So this is the camera trap. This is what's inside. So it's a regular DSLR camera, has an external battery pack, so it lasts longer. And then it's connected to this wireless sensor over here. So whenever anything moves in front of the rock pile, it communicates to the board in the box, which then triggers the camera to take a picture. And then over here, I have a regular trail camera for backup. It also takes video, and it also captures stuff at night, which the DSLR doesn't do. And as you can see here, the rock pile is on one of the tallest hills in the surrounding area. The hill is also surrounded by a large prairie dog colony. So this is the hill, again, the rock pile is right here. And prairie dog colonies attract an incredible amount of diversity of wildlife because of their important role as a keystone species. So they provide a reliable food source and homes and shelters in their burrows for over 160 different species. So since this rock pile is so close to a large prairie dog colony and it's not a high point, it not only attracts golden eagles, but all other prairie wildlife species visit, like coyotes, swift foxes, badgers, other raptors, songbirds, pronghorn will make it up there, prairie dogs sometimes, and even the coyote badger pair. So it serves out as a lookout point for the raptors because they can perch up there and survey the surrounding area. And then I think it's a communication for the mammals to check the news and see who else has been coming by. So this is a video of some of the best trail cam footage from the rock pile since 2019 that shows all the other animals who come here. So this video is about 5 minutes long and it's put to music. So I hope you guys
This is a webinar thing that Kate's
what's that?
I think you're okay. It was just someone that was unmuted.
So as you can see, I mean, so many different animals come here. And when we first came upon this rock pile, I had no idea that all those species were going to come to this one point. And I also had no idea about the history of this rock pile. I was told by people who worked at the Central Plains Experimental Range that it was built by a man named Mark who worked out there and who had recently retired. But that was all the information that they knew. So it took me a long time to track down Mark, but recently I finally did, and it was definitely worth the wait to hear the story of how why this rock pile was created. So Mark is originally from the Upper Peninsula in Michigan. He went to school in Laramie, Wyoming, and then he worked for Colorado State University doing ecological research. And he worked, lived, and raised his family in the middle of the prairie for 30 years, only about a mile from this rock pile. So the rock pile was a way for his kids to get outside and enjoy nature. Every time they would go to the top of this hill, they'd bring a rock. And over time, the pile got bigger, and it got to its biggest size around 1991. And as the kids got older, they started riding their horses up there, riding bikes. And it wasn't his intention to attract wildlife to this point, but he did say he did notice an increasing number of raptors perching up there shortly after the rock pile was established. And he also noticed more scat from mammals and also more rattlesnakes. I'm sorry, I don't know why it keeps doing that. It lost it again.
Yep, you had just talked about rattlesnakes.
Okay. So the family would spend the evenings up there watching the sunset, and those big rocks that were placed in front of the rock pile were their seats. So the two big ones were for mom and dad, and the two smaller ones were for the two kids. And those big rocks were strategically placed facing southeast because that was the best view of the mountains. And they would also spend 4th of July up there as well, watching the fireworks, because you could see them from several different towns. And you didn't have to listen to the loud sounds. It was a really special place to Mark, the spiritual place as well. It was the last place he visited before retiring and moving back to the Upper Peninsula in the middle of 2019. I came to the rock pile shortly after he retired, and it's a very special place to me too. I have visited regularly since late 2019, and I feel like I'm the new caretaker of the rock pile. It's always had somebody there. So now I think of Mark and his family every time I visit. So over time, I've been able to learn the seasonality to the wildlife that come to the rock pile. So in the summertime, mostly songbirds come and visit. So these are 3 young Western kingbirds that were photographed nearby. You can see that the one on the right has food, the other 2 are begging, but the other 2 did not get any food. The other one did not share. And this is a shrike with a young horned lark. Shrikes are known as butcher birds because they'll stab their prey onto thorns and barbed wire. And this is a rock wren. They're regulars throughout the summer. And I'm hoping maybe one day they'll nest in the rock pile because they typically nest in rocky outcrops. And then these little dots are flying ants. So if you remember from the video, they swarm the rock pile in the summertime because it's the high point. And so they come up there to mate. And so when you go up there, you're the new high point. So then they swarm you. And other songbirds will visit. The western meadowlarks come by, and lark buntings and horned larks. And then the fall is when the carnivore activity starts to pick up. So we start to see badgers again. And this is the hill back here. So the rock pile is right here. And the coyotes will start visiting more regularly as well. And then the fall is also when the raptors start to spend more time there. So in the summer, typically the raptors will only come by on occasion. So this is a juvenile bald eagle, as you can tell by the speckled white on its feathers, and then the white starting to come in on the head. And this is a golden eagle. And this photo is all orange because of smoke from the Cameron Peak fire. So this was taken in September 2020 when Colorado's largest wildfire was burning 50 miles west in the mountains. And so for 3 months, one September, October, November, one year, a family of 3 golden eagles were here almost every day for hours at a time. And this is the juvenile practicing their hunting skills with the yucca root. So you can tell this is the young because it has the white around the tail feather. It was really, really fun and special to watch this family on the trail cameras for several months. And other raptors will visit, like this prairie falcon, and all the animals that come in the fall will visit regularly throughout the winter, typically. And also in winter, we'll get some of the winter migrants, like this rough-legged hawk. And then swift foxes visit very regularly in the winter, but I've only captured them on the cameras coming at night. So I had to take a different approach to photographing them by adding flashes to the DSLR camera setup. So as you can tell from in that video, there's a lot of cool wildlife interactions that happen up here too. Probably the most common is coyotes and golden eagles. So you can see in this picture, the golden eagle is kind of fluffed up. And sometimes they'll like open up their wings at the coyote and then the coyotes will back off. So you can tell the golden eagles are probably at the top of the food chain. But the coolest interaction has been the coyote and badger pair. So this is the badger over here. And I'm still working on this rock pile diversity project, and it will be a part of my finals master's project as well. But this photo is what shifted the direction of my project once again. And that's it. The photo is also what led me to begin a master's at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, to go down the rabbit hole, or should I say the prairie dog hole, of this relationship. So my degree will be a Master's of Applied Science with a specialization in conservation storytelling. I'm working with Plant Basin Time Lapse, Mike Forsberg, and John Benson's lab of predator-prey ecology to learn more about the coyote-badger hunting relationship. So American badgers are excellent diggers. They're built for hunting burrowing mammals like gophers, ground squirrels, and prairie dogs. And they'll use this hole plugging technique where they'll fill in burrows with soil, and then it traps the prey underground without an escape route, because typically the tunnels of these burrowing animals usually connect, so they have an escape route. And sometimes badgers will hunt above ground. So coyotes are super adaptable and opportunistic hunters, and they'll eat a wide variety of prey, from deer and pronghorn to mice and voles, grasshoppers, and other insects. And rather than digging like badgers, coyotes catch their prey above ground by stalking, pouncing, and chasing prey. So where the diets of badgers and coyotes overlap is the prey that they will hunt together. So this would be ground squirrels and prairie dogs. So in the coyote-badger hunting relationship, these different methods that each animal uses individually complement each other when they work together. So the badger can go underground and dig up prairie dogs or ground squirrels. And then if the prey escapes, the coyote is waiting there and can capture it. So it's harder for the prey to escape when the two animals work together. So sometimes you'll see 2 coyotes hunting with a badger, and more rarely you'll see 3 coyotes hunting with 1 badger. And typically the badger is following the coyote, but those roles can also switch. So the first thing I started doing for my research was learning about what we already know about this relationship. This relationship is well documented and part of Indigenous knowledge as well, but we're still lacking on information about things like the geographical extent of where this relationship occurs, or how they come together in order to hunt, and the environmental conditions needed for the relationship to occur, like the human influences and size of prey colonies. The relationship likely occurs more frequently than we think. People will see them together and they think it's really cool, but that's kind of the extent of it, just an interesting phenomenon. And so, like I said, this relationship is embedded in Indigenous knowledge and stories, and they knew about it before it was witnessed by early European settlers who came to America. And there's this book called Voice of the Coyote by Frank Dobie that was written in 1950. And there's this image in it of a clay pot that's dated to be about 700 to 800 years old. And it was found in Casas Grande, Chihuahua, Mexico, which is in northern Mexico. And on one side, there's painted a head of a coyote, and on the other side is the head of a badger. And there's this quote from the book that says, "In the tales of the Navajo, coyote and badger go around with each other, hunting together and calling each other cousin." So indicating or hinting that there's more to this relationship than a mutual benefit of capturing more food when they work together. And there's another quote in this book as well that says, "There is, I am positive, a relationship between a coyote and badger not sensible to civilized man." The records of natural history observations dating back to 1884 also indicate a more intricate relationship. So this is a quote from 1884 of observation near Lander, Wyoming. And Augie wrote, "I saw several hundred feet below me a coyote and badger walking together, and every few minutes stopping and playing. The coyote would go in front of the badger, lay its head on the latter's neck, lick it, jump into the air, and give other expressions of unmistakable joy. Its antics with the badger were very much like that of a young dog playing with another pup, or when meeting its master. The badger seemed equally well pleased. This playing and fondling of each other was kept up for over half an hour, and until they disappeared around the end of a butte nearby." And this is a more recent video capturing a similar behavior to what Heidi describes. And many of you have probably seen this. This is the video of coyotes and badgers that tends to go viral. And it's from the Bay Area in California in the Santa Cruz Mountains at a culvert under a busy road. And this was seen a couple years ago. I can't remember the date, but it wasn't too long ago. Now it's pretty cute. This looks like the coyote playing with another dog. This is another quote from the Oregon State Game Commission Bulletin from 1947. It says, "Mr. Clayton Vaughter observed an adult coyote which had lost its right front foot and an adult badger traveling together. They seemed the best of friends. Could it be that some sort of partnership had been arranged between the two?" So a lot of observations are similar to this one of coyotes and badgers just traveling together is when people see them a lot. And this is from an observation from Hawken in 1907. This is in southern Alberta, Canada. And he wrote, "The coyote traveled ahead and the badger followed along as fast as he could, right at the heels of the coyote. I could see no reason, nor could I explain it in any way satisfactory to myself. And although I asked several people in the West about it, the occurrence is still a mystery to me." As another observation, this is from Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota in 1950. It says, "According to Ranger William J. Briggle, the two predators simultaneously rushed through the colony and snatched at the frightened dogs as they ran for shelter. The badger rode down his prey at the entrance of a den and dropped into the hole in one continuous movement. It's very interesting that the dissimilar hunters had adopted the stratagem of the double rush, which is used successfully by 2 or more coyotes when hunting prairie dogs. And lastly, Killian observed a pair again in southeastern Alberta in 1991. And he wrote, when first observed, the badger was digging vigorously, occasionally stopping to look around. The coyote was alert, although relaxed enough to sit or lie down periodically. Neither animal displayed any antagonistic behavior, although the 2 were only 1 meter apart. When Killian tried to move closer to the pair, the badger stopped digging, looked around, and ran towards the coyote. Initially, the badger was left far behind, but after about 700 meters, the coyote slowed down and the badger caught up. I thought it was kind of cool that they put the photo of a coyote and badger together on this cover of the issue of the Canadian Field Naturalist too. But not everybody thinks this could be a quote friendly relationship. It's important to note that coyotes have been known to kill badgers and vice versa. So the potential benefits to working together must outweigh the risks that come with it. So some naturalists think that the coyote benefits by capturing prey missed by the badger without the badger being affected, making it a commensal relationship. So the coyote benefits, but the badger doesn't. Other people think maybe the coyotes have been documenting stealing prey from the badgers. So people think maybe that could indicate that it's a kleptoparasitism relationship where the coyote is a parasite to the badger. And then it's not known whether or not either or both of these species seeks the other out to hunt together. So it could also be an incidental relationship where both the coyotes and badgers have that overlapping diet of burrowing mammals, ground squirrels and prairie dogs. So maybe they accidentally meet in these colonies, and then over time, the 2 species could have learned that food is easier to capture when they're close, but they don't necessarily like seek each other out to go hunting. But we're still not totally sure. But it seems like the overall consensus implies that there is a stronger relationship of social mutualism where both species benefit in the relationship. The main study conducted on coyote and badger associations was conducted by Minta et al. In 1992. Their study site was near Jackson Hole, Wyoming, on the National Elk Wildlife Refuge, which has a lot of ground squirrels. And their study suggested that the association has positive outcomes for both the coyote and the badger. So the study found that coyotes had a 34% increase in the capture of ground squirrels when working with the badger. And both coyotes and badgers had to travel less for their food when they worked together too. It was harder for the researchers to determine if the badgers gained more food when working with coyotes. The badgers did tend to spend more time below ground when with coyotes, and that is where badgers eat most of their prey. So this could suggest that the badgers were more successful in capturing prey when with the coyote because of their time spent underground. And badgers may also benefit from the coyote being a lookout and having a better ability to scan the surrounding area and the potential dangers, or finding the best route. I mean, there's a huge height difference between coyotes and badgers. Badgers have short little legs, so in order for them to look farther into the distance, they have to prop their head up and to look around. So the coyotes can help them with that. And then lastly, the coyote's presence above ground may help keep prairie dogs and ground squirrels below ground. So that could also increase the badger's chances of catching something. So for my master's, we're trying to build on what is already known. So the scientific literature is limited to these natural history observations that have a limited number of observations of pairs, like the ones I shared, and then studies that have been done that just focus on one location. So our research questions are aimed at learning more about the environmental conditions that influence when coyotes and badgers are together. So we're predicting that coyote and badgers need large prairie dog colonies away from human disturbance in order to cooperate. We're also wondering if there's a seasonality to this relationship, and if the two are changing the time of day that they hunt in order to hunt together. So we predict that coyotes and badgers will work together more outside of their breeding season, when their young could be at risk to predation from the other. And then finally, since coyotes and badgers typically hunt at night or during dawn and dusk, we predict that coyotes and badgers will work together during those same time periods because they overlap. And I just want to play this video again because I think it's so cool. It was captured by 2G from Tahoe, California. And he's on Instagram and Facebook and has amazing trail camera footage and does awesome bear education work in California. So if you're on Instagram or Facebook, you should definitely check him out. So this map shows many of the coyote and badger sightings from the literature, and some also that are more recent. So these sightings are indicated in red, and this map is not complete, but it still shows that this relationship occurs in many places across Western North America. And then these 5 blue points are my 5 field sites. So we have 1 in South Dakota, Wyoming, 2 in Colorado, and 1 in New Mexico. 2 of the field sites, including the rock pile site, graze cattle at least half the year. And then another 2 sites have bison. So that fence in front of some of the videos in that 5-minute rock pile video are to protect the DSLR camera from the curious cows. And then the site in southern Wyoming is Hutton Lake National Wildlife Refuge. And there's an adjacent ranch that the Fish and Wildlife Service just acquired. They graze cattle there. And Mindy is one of my contacts there, and she's giving one of these Ranching with Wildlife webinars in February about the endangered Wyoming toad, which also lives at that site. So look out for that in February. And then all 5 of these sites have prairie dogs. So we have black-tailed prairie dogs, white-tailed prairie dogs, and gunnisons. So that's 3 out of the 5 species. At each one of our 5 sites, we have a camera grid set up to try and capture coyotes and badgers. So when creating these grids, we start with a point where a coyote and badger pair has been seen before. So that would be this center point. And then from there, we buffered that out to cover 10 square kilometers. And we chose that because that's the average home range size of a coyote. And then from there, we have all these grid cells, which are 1 square kilometer. And so 1 camera goes in each of these cells. And you can see here that we choose the center 9 ideally, and then 1 adjacent. So that's the one over here. And that's how we get to 10 square kilometers. So some of these cameras are in prairie dog colonies and some aren't. So like these 2 here are prairie dogs. These 2 are springs. There's some kangaroo rat colonies. There's a cottonwood grove over here, and then a lone tree over here. And so the idea behind these grids is to have some points in prairie dog colonies and some cameras outside of prairie dogs, so we can learn where coyote and badgers are together and where they are not. So this is an example of what the cameras will capture. So this camera is down in southeastern Colorado, and you'll see coyotes in this video and you'll see badgers. We haven't seen any together yet at this camera, but there's a bunch of other animals that come here. But any sightings of each individually help with our research questions about the time of day each of these animals are active and the seasonality. So we'll still use these sightings to create a temporal activity pattern model of the times of day coyotes individually are active, when badgers are individually active, and the time of day we capture coyotes and badgers together. So this is a quick 3-minute video that shows some of the behind the scenes stuff of what's involved in checking these cameras. So this was one day last year of me checking the cameras at the Rockpile site and putting up some new cameras. So it's 3 minutes. And one other component of this project is a citizen science effort to try to get a better idea geographically of where this relationship is happening, along with having some potential behavioral insights into how coyote and badgers interact with each other. So we're working on trying to get this flyer and this forum out as far as wide as we can. So this QR code goes to, and this link here goes to our coyote badger observation form that just asks a few questions about your experience if you see one. So if anybody out there has seen one, take a picture of this slide. I'll also show it again at the end. And so tying all this back to the rock pile, this photo is looking south from the rock pile. And in 2020, 3 10-acre lots went up for sale and all were bought for residential development. I was really concerned about how this was going to affect the wildlife that I had been photographing. And unfortunately, the remaining 130 acres of this parcel are currently up for sale, likely for more development. But this is the family who moved into the middle house. This is Kimber, Randy, and Kimber's mom, Jeannie. And
I think she froze.
Yeah, I think so too. We'll wait just a minute and see if she's able to hop back on. Never fails when you're trying to give a presentation or do something, your internet acts up. Hopefully she's able to get back on. I think she'll probably jump back on. But if you have questions, you could type them in the chat box now. I think. I don't know what else to do besides just wait for her a little bit longer.
Why did this is Kimber, and I saw that somebody asked if the property could be protected, and that is a hope for the 3 lots that have behind us that are now up for sale. We're hoping that somebody can buy them and put them into a conservation easement and protect them from that development. And I know Emma is working that angle very hard, trying to find individuals or groups that would be willing to purchase the land and take care of that. Unfortunately, we're still working on, on our property, and we're not able to do that. So that is our prayer, because it is truly a special environment back there, and we're hoping that it can stay protected.
Thanks.
I left completely.
Yeah, Emma's back on. Emma, we lost you for a couple minutes.
Oh gosh. Okay, I thought so, but I couldn't tell. Okay, well, I'll try to finish where I was. I see you guys met Kimber. Where did I leave off?
You were just talking about
Had
Kimber.
our picture.
Yeah.
Your picture. All right. Okay, I'll go back to talking about you guys. So this is Kimber, Randy, and Jeannie. They're the ones who moved into the middle house of those three. And I met them shortly after they moved in. They moved here from Sacramento, California, not knowing anything about the ecosystem or the prairies, the animals of the prairie. When they started building, they learned about the coyotes and the badgers and the prairie dogs, and were of the mindset that they were going to have to kill these animals because they wanted chickens and they had dogs. But a little bit later on, they learned that they had a coyote badger pair hanging out in the trees that they planted for a windbreak. And this completely changed their view on the place that they live and the wildlife there. They could no longer kill these animals that were friends and ruin that relationship. So we quickly became friends because of our mutual love for this place. So now they love the wildlife and have a deep appreciation for the place that they live. I get texts all the time about the wildlife they see and the cool weather. And they have learned how to coexist with the wildlife and understand that they're the ones who came into the animals' homes. And they've also been proactive about protecting their animals and haven't had any issues. So they scan for wildlife out back almost every night. They have an awesome view of the rock pile hill. The rock pile is right here. They see coyotes and pronghorn all the time. They've seen a coyote badger pair in person right on their back fence line. Bald eagles will sit on top of their electric pole eating prairie dogs. They found spadefoot toads and tiger salamanders as well. And I spent a lot of time with them this summer, and one night after dinner, we were watching a coyote travel just below the rock pile, hunting prairie dogs and checking out different burrows. And then he started digging, and we actually got to see the coyote catch a prairie dog, which is pretty cool. I'd never seen that before. And then we went out the next day, and this was my impression of the coyote. So even if I think it's going to be a boring day in the prairie, or the winds are 30, 40 mile an hour, or something always surprises me. And one of the only times I've ever seen a coyote badger pair was on this freezing winter day, and the wind was blasting over 30 miles per hour and the snow was blowing sideways. And I didn't think I was going to see a thing. And then sure enough, there goes a coyote and badger walking not 10 feet away from each other, sprinting away from me in my car. And the coyote's tail was perpendicular to its body as it ran away. It was pretty funny. But I always feel better and more at peace after a day in the prairie. So in addition to the scientific research, our goal is to uplift the often overlooked grasslands through storytelling with photos and videos to show how everything is connected. Coyotes and badgers are attracted to the grassland because of the abundance of burrowing mammals. And because of their role as a keystone species, prairie dogs also attract so many other species, like the many I shared with you tonight. So conserving the grasslands protects all these species that call it home. So thank you to all the ranchers out there for conserving grasslands and giving these animals a place to live. So thanks for listening. Hopefully we have time for questions, even with all those technical difficulties. But if you've seen a coyote badger pair, please reach out. The observation form is on my Instagram, and also the project story map. So I'd love to hear about any experiences any of you all have had.
There's one question here in the chat, Emma, that I think is an interesting one. It's, have you seen any, or do you know of any correlation with gender between the coyote and badger? Or have you been able to tell? And age as well was the other question.
Yeah, I can't tell, and I haven't read anything about it either. In that Minta et al. Study near Jackson, Wyoming, they did note that once they did see a lactating female badger with a coyote before. And yeah, with the age, so the coyote badger pair that is near the rock pile, so the black-footed ferret breeding center is about 10 miles away from there, and they have seen the coyote badger pair there. And it was this lighter colored coyote that I think people nicknamed white leg. And so potentially those coyotes were traveling that distance, and her picture was first taken in like 2016, and then I think I got them on video in like 2019 or 2020. So that's kind of already an old coyote at like 4 or 5 or older. But no, we don't really know yet.
Cool. I think that was the only other question. Oh, are there disadvantages to ranchers when they have badgers or coyotes on their grazing lands?
So at the Central Plains Experimental Range, they graze cattle for the summer, and I haven't heard of any issues that they have had with coyotes and badgers. They have a really healthy population of coyotes, especially, and I get a lot of badgers on the trail cameras too. So I mean, I think potentially badgers digging holes could be an issue, but I don't really know anything directly, I guess.
All right, we're going to wrap it up. That was a great presentation, Emma. Thanks for joining us tonight, everyone. And thank you, Emma, for presenting. We are going to have other webinars this winter in our series. So if you're interested, stay tuned for those, and we'll try to email you out information about those when they come. So thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
And Emma, I'm going to stop my recording.